You know, I love podcasting. I have since 2006, back when you had to use like a Dixie cup with string to make the thing work. And that's why I'm so excited that we recently moved Mysterious Goings On to Anchor FM to record our podcast. I gotta tell you, I don't regret it a bit. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. Not going to lie to you, when I first heard about Anchor, I was a little dubious because I've been doing it the hard way for so long. But I got to tell you, it's very easy. Use a Stripe account. Get sponsors. You're not paying monthly hosting fees. The sound quality is great. The distribution is phenomenal. Friends, download the free Anchor app today if you want to start your own podcast, or go to anchor.fm to get started. Remember, you heard it here first on Mysterious Goings On.
Innovation is crucial to the competitive advantage and very survival of virtually every business, particularly as companies adapt to rapid advances in technology and the new normal of COVID-19. And while most business leaders place a priority on generating innovative solutions and products, few invest in cultivating the foundation of innovation, creativity. Now, regular listeners to this show know that we're all about creativity. We started as a show about writing, but we've branched out and we've been interviewing folks from every walk of life, from food service product managers and designers to musicians to actors and to most recently a film producer. So I'm really excited to talk with an expert on creativity who has a really, really excellent approach to why creativity isn't just the sole purview of artists, but can be everywhere. And it's Dr. Natalie Nixon. She's president of Figure Eight Thinking, a consulting firm that emboldens organizations to apply creativity for transformative business results. She's a global speaker and regular contributor to Inc. on creativity and the future of work. She is also the editor of Strategic Design Thinking, Innovation in Products, Services, Experiences, and Beyond. She holds a Ph.D. in Design Management from the University of Westminster in London and a BA in Anthropology, Africana Studies from Vassar College. My old school, just kidding. No, I did not go to and lives in her hometown of Philly. Her new book, and we're going to talk about it today, is The Creativity Leap: Unleash Curiosity, Improvisation, and Intuition at Work. Welcome so much, Dr. Nixon.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too. The Creativity Leap. What are we talking about here? What started this book? What made you start thinking about why this needed to be discussed in the public space?
Well, what started my thinking about creativity was this creeping sensation that as I was consulting clients on helping them to build cultures of innovation, I had a feeling that we were starting in the wrong place. It often seemed that we were throwing around the word innovation and it was going over each other's heads, and we were actually talking about different things. And we were actually kind of resulting in this innovation churn. And so it provoked me to take a step back and really figure out what could I contribute to clarify this process. And what I realized in my view, where we needed to be starting was at the engine for innovation, which is creativity. So that's really where it started. I started out in my consulting practice. And as it turns out, I was able to fold in a number of areas of research and work that I had done in the past that led to the way I define creativity.
I want your take on this because we've had other guests who speak to creativity in a business realm. What's the general pushback that most people feel who believe, like you and I do, that creativity is huge? What's the pushback they get from the C-suite or from managers about that?
I think the general pushback is that, the boardroom is no place for creativity. And, that's unfortunate because it actually points out that they don't really understand creativity. And in my view, we have ghettoized creativity in the arts. which is not fair to artists.
Right.
And it's not beneficial to our society at large. So the way I ultimately have defined creativity is an attempt, I hope, to democratize creativity, make it more accessible to a range of people who will mutter things like, well, I'm not a creative type because I can't, fill in the blank, sing, dance, paint. So I define creativity as our ability to toggle between wonder and rigor to solve problems.
In your book, you're drawing on interviews with creative people in wide-ranging industries, professions. Could you tell us a little bit about that? And, how did you go about that? And when you say you talk to wide-ranging professionals and industries, can you just give us some insight into how that looked?
Sure. In the interest of full transparency, I am a Libra, so I'm very indecisive. But I also really have always thrived in multidisciplinary spaces. You reference what I studied at Vassar. I was a double major in cultural anthropology and Africana studies. And I realize now retrospectively that studying Africana studies, which was the study of people in the African diaspora around the world, people of African descent, it was my first purview into systems design and systems thinking, because I was learning about a range of perspectives in the African diaspora through the lens of philosophy and economics and political science and sociology and that sort of thing. So I really have always thrived in exploring things from a number of different angles and lenses. And cultural anthropology equipped me with a way to go into problem definition where I was learning to frame questions differently. So I say all that because ultimately in the Creativity League, I interviewed over 50 people who were coming from, I interviewed folks from management consultancy companies like the chief economist at Deloitte, Ira Kalish, Bhushan Sethi, who is a principal at PricewaterhouseCoopers. But I also interviewed Daniel Goods at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab, and Céline Barrel, who is a nose. She's a perfumier at International Flavors and Fragrances. I interviewed farmers. I interviewed our family plumber. I interviewed just as many different types of people as I possibly could to understand how creativity is showing up in their work, and if the way I had framed it as toggling between wonder and rigor was resonating, was it making sense? And as it turned out, it really was.
So you were truly plumbing the depths of creativity.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I had to do. Listeners know I'm going to get one or two of these in per show. I apologize.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about. I want to know about the three eyes of creativity. This is something you've developed here. This is fascinating to me. Can you elaborate?
Yeah. So it's not enough to stop at this definition that creativity is toggling between wonder and rigor to solve problems and produce novel value. I also wanted to ensure that I was equipping anyone who was interested in ways to actually exercise creativity, get better at it, and amplify it in their work and their lives. So this is where my very loop comes into play. So the three I's are inquiry, improvisation, and intuition. And that's, embedded in the subtitle of the book. We use curiosity instead of inquiry. But let's actually start first with improvisation, because that was really the first foray into this work. I was a professor for 16 years and at Philadelphia University, which is now Thomas Jefferson University. My first 10 years, I was a professor of fashion management, the business of fashion. And then the last 6 years, I created and launched a strategic design MBA program. In the middle of all that, actually right before I launched the MBA program, I naively decided to earn a Ph.D. while working full time. Because I thought, how hard could that be? It's just a big paper at the end. Anyway, as I said, I was naive, but I did that. And what was cool about it is that it totally, mind-blown experience where I was launched into this whole field of design thinking, strategic design strategy, a very integrative way of going about innovation and strategy. And my research was looking at the ways the Ritz-Carlton Hotel designed experiences for guests. And I ultimately mapped that through the lens of improvisation, because organizations like the Ritz-Carlton are actually what we would call improvisational organizations. And I looked at the way they were designing work processes and experiences for clients through the lens of jazz music. And that got me really steeped in a bit into chaos theory. Because as it turns out, jazz, an improvisational system, is actually something we would call a chaotic system. Nerding out a bit there, but long story short, all improvisational systems are chaotic. A chaot is a word that D. Hock created. He was the first president of Visa, the credit card company. And he really was striving at Visa to create a chaotic organization, one that thrived on both chaos and order. And when you start learning about chaotic systems, which again stems from chaos theory and complexity theory, you begin to see chaotic systems everywhere. They abound in nature. It's the way our bodies heal. And so that was really cool. And I wanted to, and I thought to myself, creativity is a type of chaotic system, right? And you
Right.
hear that in the way I've defined it with wonder and rigor. The intuition piece came through because as my professional social network started to connect more with entrepreneurs and startup leaders, I started listening closely to their origin stories. And there's always this moment when a successful entrepreneur will say something like, something told me not to do the deal, or something told me to work with her over him, even though her pedigree wasn't as sniffy. And I thought, what is that something? I think it's intuition. We don't touch intuition in MBA programs. We don't touch it in medical school and law school, but every successful leader will reference that. So I went down that path, and this was now after my doctoral work. So I had kind of improvisation in my pocket, chaotic systems in my pocket. I was getting curious about the role of intuition in decision making. And then came the third piece, which was just some of my fun professional reading. I really got super enthusiastic about the work of Warren Berger. And he, as your listeners may know, is the author of A More Beautiful Question, which I love. And I was so appreciative of Warren Berger's contribution that the most innovative companies actually have leaders who lead with questions. They encourage curiosity. And so now, as I'm retelling this, it sounds like a nice, neat, linear, lockstep process. Of course, as you know, any research process is very messy, but
Right.
that's really, those are the three ingredients that led me to say, I think that the best ways for us to exercise our creativity are to be more improvisational, which is not to be a great stand-up comic or jazz musician. It just needs to be adaptive, be about the build, yes, and embrace mistakes, to really pay attention to our intuition, which is a type of pattern recognition, and to embrace curiosity. To, as a former educator, there's always that moment in a classroom experience where the instructor, the teacher, the professor will ask, so are there any questions? There's just silence, and it's
Right.
the worst, right? People are
Right.
afraid to ask a question, and we have to stop doing that.
Intuition is a form of pattern recognition. I've never, ever heard that before. And maybe that's something that's kind of common in the world, the research world that you worked in, but I've just never heard of it that way. And of course, intuition is another word for that is your gut, I guess.
That's right. That's right. And did you know we are physiologically designed to follow our intuition? Here's what I mean by that. Did you know there's something in our bodies called the vagus nerve?
Yeah, yes.
Right.
As someone who's passed out, I know.
Oh, really? Tell me
Yeah.
more. Why did you have how did that lead to you knowing about the vagus nerve?
I was very ill once, and long story short, I guess I got delirious, and I contorted my neck in a weird way, and then I panicked, and my body just seized up, and next thing I know, I'm on the floor. There's an ambulance been called. I've got a mild concussion, but my doctor said, I think you tripped your vagus nerve. And I said, oh, well, I didn't even play any blackjack.
Right, right. No, it's
Right?
right.
It's not spelled VEGAS. I know. But I mean, does that sound right? Or I mean, that's the first time I heard about it.
That's so interesting. Interesting. So, all right. So for the listeners, vagus is, as in our bodies, it's VAGUS. It is the only nerve that extends from our cranium down through our heart and into our gut. So when we talk about my gut is telling me, right? Our gut is literally telling us, right?
Yeah.
It's this kind of internal antenna that we have. What's fascinating is that I reference people like Harriet Tubman, who was an incredible strategist. She liberated hundreds of enslaved Black Americans through her ability to just have astute military intelligence. I mean, she was a spy. Attention to her dreams in order to map the ways through, the night in order to take a lot of people from the South to North into freedom. Albert Einstein has this beautiful quote, which I'm going to botch up, but something like, how he talks about how intuition is the master and intelligence is its servant. Intuition is the sacred master, and intelligence is its rationale is its servant, and we've forsaken the master for the servant. I just messed that up. He says it much more nicely. But he was a huge proponent of intuition. He was an incredible musician. He would fiddle around on his violin, a piano when he needed to tinker through hard physics and math problems. And then Steve Jobs was a huge advocate of intuition. So we have these examples of incredibly intelligent, smart people who unabashedly embrace their intuition, and our bodies are really designed to pay attention to that. And I say, getting to the way I look at it is pattern recognition. Intuition is a type of muscle or sonar, right? So the more we use it, the stronger it gets, the clearer it gets. The more we ignore it, the flabbier, flaccid, and dimmer it gets. So we've really got to pay attention.
I'm also fascinated as someone who's dealt with some issues with it, but some people who have post-traumatic stress disorder, there is is there kind of a strange fraying between intuition and overdrive on trying to protect oneself too? I don't want to go too far afield here. Yeah.
I get your point. Your question brings to mind something that I have tried to make a clearer distinction of in my own mind, which is the difference between instinct and intuition.
Aha.
So for example, when you're outside and if you see a squirrel or a deer or a bird, that moment, that animalistic knowing that I'm not going to wait to see if this is dangerous, but I'm instinctively going to move, which we see animals do all the time, that I call instinct.
Aha.
Intuition dwells, in my opinion, a little bit more in the fuzziness. It sits a little bit more with that ambiguity. It's both ambiguous, but also just this clear knowing that you cannot rationally explain, but you know what you know what you know. Sometimes I call it intuition also. I call it thought feelings, because it's this weird hybrid that really helps us to make a decision. Let me give you an example from the book. One of the people I interviewed is Biplab Sarkar, who is an engineer. He's a Ph.D. in engineering. I think he's an EE, electrical engineer, but I may be wrong, but he's an engineer. And he's also the CEO of Vectorworks. And when I got to the part of my interview with him where I was going to ask him about intuition, I was a bit nervous. I thought, oh gosh, this is an engineer. He's head of this tech company. He's going to laugh me off this phone when I start asking him about intuition. He totally rolled with it and started sharing examples and stories where intuition has helped him to make decisions. Now, he likes to couple it with some data, but he doesn't hesitate to act on it. He listens to his intuition in order to make decisions.
That surprises me, because I would have your same apprehension, an engineer, because I started my career working with physicians at a medical school, and my job was to interview researchers and MDs about what they were researching, and then kind of, for want of a better term, dumb it down so it could be spread out to the world. I mean, because if you talk, MD, PhD level to a guy like me, and no, I need it down to an 8th, 9th grade level, please. So I understand that apprehension. And my wife actually worked for an engineering firm as a PR person for years. And she was like, oh my gosh, because engineers think that way. So what a rarity it seems.
Yes. It seems, right?
Right.
It seems. But again, this is at the levels where people are leaders, where they've become really successful.
Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting that there's just seemed to be this pattern where, yes, they fall back on their learned skill set of how they've been educated, but they also are very attuned to these other drivers that help kind of fill us out more fully as leaders.
Just a couple of points. The power of lateral thinking. I love this. There's this payoff of giving employees time and space for daydreaming. Really quickly, when I'm working particularly on a new novel, I find physical activity helpful, mindless, as you would call it, yard work. I hike. Just hiking. I get all my best ideas just walking through the woods. And that sounds like a cliche, but it's really not, because it works.
It's not, it works. It is actually, if we are, so one of my buddies, Balder Onerheim, Balder is Norwegian. We met in Copenhagen. He was such an amazing host to me. This was back in maybe 2016 or 2017. I think it was 2016. I visited Copenhagen. And he is a Ph.D. who studies the neuroscience of creativity. And he's also the founder of Plato Science. And he and his business partners and research partners have been working on a way to help humans re-trigger the neural synapses of our brains through electrical currents. His perspective is that we don't hesitate in modern times to alter our brain chemistry by imbibing pills and medicine, either for, whatever the issue is, for pain, to calm us down, to help us stay awake, all those sorts of things. And he says we've only tapped maybe 10% of the reality that we are these physical entities of neural synapses zapping all over the place. We have this electromagnetic field that we consist of. So Plato Science is this, it's kind of like, it looks like a headset that you can put on your head, and it will start to, if you need to have more generative thought, it starts to rewire the neurosynapse activity in your brain so that you are more generative, which tends to be in the lateral parts of the brain. And when you need more clear, laser focused concentration, it does it reverse. I am a layman in terms of the neuroscience of creativity, so I'm not doing it justice. But it's called Plato Science, and one of the things that Balder talked to me about is that, the reason why when we daydream, we go for a swim, when we're cooking, when we're just taking a walk, it's allowing that laser focus to just, that use of the brain to relax. And there's, our brains need time. My language is marinate. We need the time for all of this deep focus to go back and for all of these random associations to take place. That's why sleep is so important.
Right.
The older I'm getting, the more I'm embracing that reality. It's so, so important. It's why, as you're just waking up, sometimes you get clarity on something. So I actually take daydream breaks during the day. I will, if it's cold outside, I'll stand by the window with a timer for 5 minutes. I'm from Philly. We have a big front step stoop culture. I'll sit outside the front steps and just relax and watch clouds or watch an ant. It doesn't matter, but you need to let go. You need to just not always be, well, no pun intended, zoomed in all the time like we are in this quarantine.
And, I interviewed a psychologist who said the same thing. He says the reason why, to his understanding from a psychology standpoint, and he deals with a lot of his patients, is particularly when people are doing menial tasks or just like you said, cooking, or just stuff that's not high functioning, and you're not in a business meeting. Also, your brain is not consumed with putting up the front or the facade of, right? Does that ring a bell too?
Yeah, and work can be very performative, right? There's a lot that we're how we're see the face. Think something someone just said is crazy. We can't show it on our face, So there's a lot of other stuff going on. I agree with that. Yeah, you can just let it all go or let it all hang out when you don't have to be in a performance mode. And our brains consume so much energy to serve us, to help us function throughout the day, which is why nutrition is also as important as sleep. So, yeah.
Oh gosh, there's so much here. I'm going to ask you one. I know we're closing in on our time limit here, which is a drag because I'm enjoying this so much and I'm learning so much. I just interviewed a few weeks ago a gentleman who talked about AI in marketing, and I see that you touch on AI with creativity in the workplace. So can you just go with that? What's your take on that?
Well, it's here. It's not going anywhere. The fourth industrial revolution, we're in it. The train has left the station. the fourth industrial revolution is characterized by ubiquitous technology because of the cloud. And what that means is a few things. I don't think it does us any, it doesn't serve us to have kind of this dystopian view of the future of like, the robots will take over. That's not going to happen.
Skynet, yeah.
Right. It also doesn't serve us to have a completely utopian view, right? Well, don't worry about it. Some people lose their jobs, it'll be okay. No, it's something in the middle, and a wonderful woman named Galit Ariel, who is an augmented reality expert. I interviewed Galit for the book. She talks about a heterotopia, something kind of in between a dystopia and a utopia. And what I love about what Galit taught me is that technology at its ultimate has the capacity to amplify what is uniquely human. What we're going to find in our organizations and companies as tasks get taken over with artificial intelligence, it's actually going to amplify and make more room for us to be more human. So if an organization is not prepared and designed to optimize people to show up, as I say, we all show up in drag every day to work, but it allows us to like remove the drag and really show up more our fully human selves. Those are going to be the companies and the organizations that will thrive, because tasks will be taken over. And P.S., we will still need someone to ask a better question who's going to be able to design a better algorithm. So that humanness is still going to matter. And that's creativity.
Well, okay, Dr. Nixon, as I said, we're closing in on your time here, but I wanted to ask, okay, so first of all, who needs to read this book besides everybody? Who are you aiming the book at? Is it anybody who's in the world of work? Is there somebody specific that you want to pick up this book?
I am tempted to say everybody, but here's who I think really are benefiting from the book. People who don't think they have a creative bone in their body, people who are feeling they are suspicious that they are not well positioned for the upskilling and the reskilling that we're going to need to do in this fourth industrial revolution. They will be inspired, encouraged by this book, and they will also have really practical tips and takeaways. The highest compliment I've been getting about the book is that people have been emailing me, texting me, leaving nice reviews on Amazon, saying things like, "My copy is dog-eared. It's highlighted everywhere." Like that's, for a writer, that's like amazing. That's high praise. So for me, I want to change lives through ideas. That's my goal and my work. And so it's very important to me that in this time of the COVID-19 quarantine, in this time in the United States of really acknowledging systemic racism, our organizations, the way we work, the way we interact with each other has to shift dramatically. And creativity is actually the way we're going to do that. And you can read my book to figure out how.
and I am going to, and I want to know where to get. So you said Amazon. Is that the best place to go? Where do you
Amazon
is
a great place to go. It's available paperback, on Audible, and on Kindle. It's also available on Barnes & Noble's website and at local booksellers. The publisher is Barrett Kohler, and they also sell the book on their website. And I just want to do a nice little plug. When you're launching a book during the middle of a global health pandemic, it makes you a little nervous. But I have to say, I had to practice what I preached in order to launch the book. I had to really stretch myself. And the launch has exceeded my expectations. I did a series of Facebook Lives and LinkedIn Lives with people like John Maeda and Seth Godin and Fei Wu and King Britt. And the book was listed ranking number 1 on Amazon's hot new releases in the creativity category. And since over the last 4 days, the Audible was number 2 and the Kindle was number 3. So that has since shifted, but I did take a screenshot because I was so delighted. And I have to say, these are days that are designed for creativity.
They are. And this is another reason I'm honored that you guested on our show is that, see folks, I have this running commentary with my listeners about, we started in 2016, the show. We were a new and noteworthy show, but you have your ups and downs, right? And, we have some very good guests and we have some really great guests. And I think today qualifies as the very great guest, even though you're a a Philadelphia Eagles fan, just kidding though. We were chatting offline about how I'm of course a Chiefs fan and Eagles fan here, but we share Andy Reid and your new coach. We have all these things in common. But Dr. Nixon, Natalie Nixon, thank you so much. And I'm going to put all those links in the show notes where people can get you. But also, if they want to know more just about you beyond the book, figure8thinking.com. Is that correct?
Yes. Thank you so much. Yes. Figure 8 thinking, figure 8 like ice skating, but it's the number 8, figure8thinking.com. And I really appreciate you having me on as your guest. Thank you so much.
It is truly my pleasure, Dr. Nixon. All right. That was Natalie Nixon, and this has been Mysterious Goings On. And until next time, as always, keep reading.
It's a great time to get a great deal on a new car when you get approved for an auto loan from PenFed. Our Powered by True Car rates are as low as 1.39% APR on new vehicles. Finance for a longer term to lower your monthly bill. Plus, take up to 60 days to schedule your first payment. Join PenFed and together we'll keep you moving forward. Anyone can apply. Visit penfed.org/auto or call 1-800-247-5626. To receive any advertised product, you must become a member of PenFed, insured by NCUA. It's a great time to get a great deal on a new car when you get approved for an auto loan from PenFed. Our Powered by True Car rates are as low as 1.39% APR on new vehicles. Finance for a longer term to lower your monthly bill. Plus, take up to 60 days to schedule your first payment. Join PenFed and together we'll keep you moving forward. Anyone can apply. Visit penfed.org/auto or call 1-800-247-5626. To receive any advertised product, you must become a member of PenFed, insured by NCUA.